Tough questions for State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel at his Monday press conference in Washington, D.C. From the very beginning, most of the questions dealt with U.S. policy in Gaza.
Daphne, you want to kick us off?
Great, thanks. Has the Secretary had any more conversations with Israeli counterparts since yesterday? I saw the readout of his conversation with Israel's defense minister. Can you provide any more detail on what they discussed as well? The readout didn't go beyond the usual lines.
I don't have any additional calls to read out beyond saying that we engage with our partners in Israel regularly around the clock, but I don't have anything else to preview at the moment.
And what has the tone of these latest conversations been?
Well, we have been pretty clear, both publicly and privately, that as it relates to a potential military operation in Rafah, that we would be opposed to one that does not address our very serious concerns about humanitarian aid, about the more than 1 million people who are seeking refuge, as well as Rafah being a region that is key to the facilitation of the safe departure of foreign nationals. And so we are continuing to have conversations about that, continuing to have conversations about ensuring that every measure possible is pursued to ensure the increase of flow of humanitarian aid so that more aid can get into Gaza. And we're continuing to discuss areas in which we can continue to collaborate to ensure the defeat of Hamas and that the October 7th terrorist attacks can't be repeated.
Has Israel provided any assurances to the U.S. that the operation in Rafah will remain limited?
So again, we have yet to see a credible plan for a military operation in Rafah that addresses the areas of concern that I just laid out.
And you say you haven't seen a credible plan, but how much detail does Israel provide on its plans in its conversations?
I'm just not going to get into that level of specificity of our diplomatic engagements.
And then I just have one more on Gaza, sorry. There's some footage on social media reportedly showing protesters blocking trucks carrying humanitarian aid into Gaza at the Turkumia crossing and damaging its contents. Are you aware of this, and have you raised this with Israeli officials?
So we are aware of these reports, and we have raised this with officials in Israel. You saw in the Secretary's readout of some calls that he had last week of this being raised as well, but I will reiterate it here. It is our strong view that aid cannot and must not be interfered with. We have raised this incident with the government of Israel, and we expect them to take appropriate action. Camilla.
Thank you. Just sticking on the National Security Memorandum.
Sure.
Would you, you've mentioned Chug, you've mentioned that the State Department has its own internal process of assessing cases for Israel and other countries that are in conflict. Would you say that the National Security Memorandum has at least been a useful tool for the State Department in being able to bring forward some of these conclusions in a public light, whereas perhaps your other internal processes wouldn't have necessarily done so or wouldn't plan on doing so anytime soon?
So I think the important thing to remember here, Camilla, is that no new standards were imposed. Instead, the National Security Memorandum was a tool that spelled out already existing standards set by U.S. policy and set by international law, including the law of armed conflict that countries must adhere to. This is we view the National Security Memorandum as now another tool in our tool belt to assess circumstances on the ground and to, in this particular case, assess the use of U.S. security articles in a particular battlefield. But I think the important thing to remember is that we didn't issue this memorandum because we thought any country was necessarily violating these standards. Instead, we wanted to be transparent about the standards that we require countries to adhere to and offer an assessment of a certain time period that the National Security Memorandum is consistent with.
Can I just one on something that was mentioned
Sure.
in the report released on Friday it said that 40% of the Israel-Gaza related cases within the State Department's CHERG process are now closed. Can you give us an idea of what closed means? Does that mean that some of them have gone through to the Leahy process? Have others gone, other cases been deferred back to Israel for them to come to some kind of conclusion or agreement on what could be improved or done better? How do we assess the word closed there with those 40%?
So I will check for specifics, Camilla, but the important thing to remember about the CHERG process is that there are a number of outputs that can be at the end of a CHERG process, some of them including the Leahy process. Some of it could be consultations with the government through our bilateral relationship. Some of those outputs could be additional training. So I'm not going to speak to the deliberative process in specificity beyond just saying that we continue to have tools at our disposal to look at this, and we have every intention to do so, and we make that very clear in the National Security Memorandum that we'll continue to use the tools at our disposal to continue to look at the situations on the ground, look as this conflict develops, but also look at the flow of humanitarian aid and the protection of civilians as well.
Can I just clarify a couple
Sure.
things you said?
Let me do it, and then I'll come to you, Said.
Sorry. On the raising with Israel, the incident on aid trucks, that was today's incident. Is that right?
Yes.
Clarifying, you didn't mean more generally. And then who raised with who?
As you know, I'm not going to get into the specifics of these conversations, but we talk to our partners in Israel all the time, around the clock, and have intend to raise issues like this when they come up.
And then you told Sean that a country's overall commitment to international humanitarian law is not necessarily disproven, but by what may be individual IHL violations. There have been accusations for dozens of incidents. If all those end up being violations, can you still say Israel is fulfilling its commitment to abide by IHL?
That is, I'm just not going to get ahead of a hypothetical. We are talking about things that are still mid-process in some instances, but again, in the context of the National Security Memorandum, given the circumstances on the ground, we have not been able to make a conclusive determination. But again, just given what we are seeing, it is fair to assess that there have been instances in which Israel has not held up its obligation of complying with international humanitarian law. We will continue to pursue these kinds of things through the tools that exist in the United States, but Israel has also indicated that it will continue to pursue accountability through the mechanisms that exist in its own government. And they have indicated to us that they have hundreds of cases open, including some that are in administrative review and some that are in the middle of prosecution, and we'll let them speak to those processes.
But given all that, do you still feel Israel is fulfilling its commitment to IHL and that it is committed to it?
That's our understanding. Yes, that's what we believe. Said, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just to follow up on Camilla's point. Now, you're saying that, okay, they likely broke the law, but not enough to change policy. So what is the point of the report? I mean, in simple terms, what is the point?
I think I answered that question,
I understand.
Said.
I just want to hear.
If you understand, then why are you asking?
No, I want to hear, your justification for if you have the report out there, policy is not going to change. There is to be breaking the law and so on. You are likely to have.
That's not what the report says, Said.
So the report is public. Says they did not likely break the law.
The report says, first of all, let me just be clear about what this is. The National Security Memorandum does not impose any new standards. We spelled out the existing standards that have already existed, set by U.S. policy and international law, and that what we expect countries and partners to adhere to when they receive weapons from the United States. As it relates to Israel, the report does not determine that Israel has violated international humanitarian law. But we believe through various assessments of instances that it is likely that in these instances they have failed to meet their obligations of meeting international humanitarian law. But that is a process that's going to continue both through the tools that are at our disposal, and that tools in which the Israeli government has to hold itself accountable.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.